Iwan Sunito here from Sydney, Australia. You're listening to Headsmack Podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavoni, and I have another misfit with me today. We are joined by a visionary who's reshaped Australia's property landscape, Iwan Sunito. And as the founder and the CEO of One Global Capital, he's built an empire of award-winning developments across Sydney and beyond, blending innovation, luxury, and bold design. From his early days as an architect to leading one of the country's most recognized real estate brands, Iwan has been driven by a relentless pursuit of excellence. But beyond business, he's deeply committed to mentorship and philanthropy and empowering the next generation of leaders. In this conversation, we'll uncover the mindset, challenges, and game-changing decisions that have defined his journey. Iwan, welcome. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's good to see an Aussie across the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. It's been a few years since we've been together. I think the last time we were together was in Melbourne. We had dinner together, and that's been a couple of years. And so it's finally great to meet up with you and connect with you again, even across all these oceans using technology.
And that's wonderful. Thanks for having me too. I mean, Paul, I think you're doing a great job in your Headsmack podcast. I mean, that's a great name, Headsmack.
Yeah, because, it came from the idea that these aha moments, these head smacks that we sometimes have, where, maybe it's an obvious answer, maybe it's a new answer, but something that just make us go, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that, or wow, that's so obvious. And so I believe in this conversation, we're going to have a lot of those because you've got an amazing story and I'm excited to get into it and talk about it. But before we get into what you're doing now, which is, you're basically reshaping the skyline of Sydney with some of the most amazing architecture. And so I want to talk about that. But I also want to kind of talk about your origin story. Where did Iwan start? And you can go as far back as would be relevant, but I want to hear a little bit about your backstory.
I think if you analyze my story, I mean, it's somebody who grew up in the jungle of Kalimantan. I mean, with the forest on the back of a house with monkeys, orangutan, and very famous orangutan rehabilitation that's visited by Julia Roberts in Pangkalan. You probably don't know where the place is, but it's a place where Asia kind of disappeared in one of that disaster. And so I grew up in there, and I think my journey, it's about a comeback story, somebody who's struggling at high school or at school's day and managed to come back and do well, and then was sent to Sydney despite the fact that I failed in one of the year. And my mom and dad just continued to have faith in their children. And that was just this great story of, you don't give up on people that you love, and
Yeah.
you keep on saying, hey, you can do better.
Yeah.
In Australia, and I kind of find the thing that I think what I love about the positivity of culture in Australia, where, hey, you can do better, mate. I mean, it was like, and the ability to actually question things and say, why? I mean, why 1 + 1 is 1? And suddenly I kind of found that my entrepreneurship, I think in a way that I don't really like to be told by people, but when somebody believing in me and keep believing, like my mom, my wife, and who said, look, hey, you can do better next year. And that's where I found my path, and slowly building up a small business with a $50,000 turnover in the first year. And from my sunroom, turning that business, second year later, I put together $5 million capital, did our first development in Bondi Junction back in 1996, 54 units, $28 million job, 14-story building, and made $5 million, and continued to grow that business through crisis of the Asian financial crisis in 1998, through the 2004 New South Wales recession, economic recession that we have, and then through the 2008 global financial crisis, and then the biggest of all, COVID-19.
Yeah.
And by that time, the business have actually grown massively and was recognized to be one of the largest private property developer in the country. And then a smack bang a moment where you get hit with this business split, and you're like an octopus where, wow, you lost your arm and you didn't realize you still have 7 arms, and you thought that you lost it all. And
Right.
it was an interesting journey of almost going through the valley of really probably the valley of depression, and managed to come back again 6 months later and pick up the fight in 2023 and win the unwinnable war and just grow the business and rebrand the whole business to One Global Capital. And now we're doing big jobs that are far bigger than what I thought that I've lost, and I thought I could never
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it. So rebranding, repositioning, and then just really just keep fighting and learning how to survive for another day. I mean, as long as you can live and just hang on there and fight for another day, because the next day it's a journey that it may not be you making the smartest decision, but it was more your enemy making the wrong decision. But if you just keep hang on there, keep fighting, and don't give up, you'll get there. So that's
Yeah.
where it is now, and moving forward, 7 years from now, going public vision. I mean, with a sixth job that is in three in our hand and three to go, and really looking at listing the company with a $5 billion enterprise value, 2031, and
Wow.
hoping
Wow.
to list one of the initiative that we have, which is really a robotized prefab hotel construction across the whole world. Only building it for ourselves in New York. I mean, that's really probably the dream moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we get into some of that, I do want to kind of go a little bit back on your backstory. Is you mentioned that when you came to Australia, you entered entrepreneurship. Did somebody in your family, were they an entrepreneur? Where did you get that motivation or that idea, as opposed to just getting a job like everybody else?
I think that's kind of like dad is an entrepreneur. Mom's always an entrepreneur, but I never really thought about wanting initially to be a businessman. In fact, that I thought, I said to my mom one day, look, I think I'd be happy enough if I could just make a living and be a happy person. And my mom says to dad, gee, I mean, our son's vision is too small. But having said that, they've never really pushed us. But I think what dad did in the early day, Paul, like it's almost like dragging me from school. Like we always stay where dad's still doing business in his small store in the jungle of Kalimantan. And it was just a grocery store selling clothes, fabrics, tool for construction, plywood, timbers, and the like. And we're stuck in the back of the room and sleeping over the rice bag. It
Wow.
was like, and then dinner time, lunchtime, we don't have Nintendo, PlayStation, and the thing in the past. Like we get dragged into a meeting with his business friend from Korea, from
Wow.
Malaysia, and dad only graduated from high school. But that was really interesting that it was that kind of rub on me that I learned to grow with the biggest of the biggest businessmen and don't really feel insecure at all. So I think
Yeah.
that, and but they kind of always said, look, no, you focus on your study. When you finish that, then you focus on your business. But really, right now, don't worry about your business. First, just focus on your study. So I think it was there. I think the DNA is there. I think
Yeah.
dad, businessman, very very smart businessman in his village. Village. I mean, I have to qualify that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the biggest businessman in his town, and he was connected with some of the Korean timber tycoon that came to Australia to Kalimantan to do his work. Later on, then he
Wow.
moved to Surabaya, but he was already preparing us while he was in the village, preparing us to go to Sydney to study because he thought that there's a bigger world, better world out there in Australia.
Yeah.
So he did.
Yeah. That's
So that,
amazing that he
that was
brought you into those
1990,
meetings.
no, 84. Yeah, we were sent to Australia. Yeah, I think that was amazing, isn't it? Like it's almost like dad never really tell us what to do, but he show us what to do.
Yeah, yeah, and by bringing you into those meetings too, you got to see the backside of business. Sometimes the not pretty side, but also the real side of business, as opposed to the glamorous, outside that some people might see. And so that was pretty wise of him to bring you in to those
Mm.
meetings, even when you were young.
Yeah, I think nowadays I kind of realize that you can't really achieve what you can't conceive.
Yeah,
So, in other words, that you can talk about it till you blow yourself, like you kind of say, "Gee, I mean, you're not listening." No, because they haven't seen it yet. And
yeah,
there were
yeah,
a time when I told my people that we are an urban resort developer, and I kept talking about the light, the color, and the whole thing, and they were listening to me. But after 3 or 4 years, I realized that I really do not know what I mean. So I
yeah.
was at one time. I was in Bali, and I said, "Guys, how you going? Fly tomorrow to Bali." The next 3 days, they were in Bali, and ah, now I understand what you mean about the urban resort. You see how the frangipani, the lighting, the dark mood, the color, the whole essential thing to create an urban resort was what makes me me. But now they now see what I'm in from there on.
Right.
And 10 years later, they always remember that journey. Of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
they end up hanging on the club, by the way, bar. I think they enjoy that trip because of that more the Aussie. The
Yeah.
love.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Give them a beer and they'll be happy with that.
Okay, so you went from the jungle to Sydney, Australia. Very different, very different culture, very different way of life. And so you went to study. Is that right?
Yes, I was sent to study my year 12 there.
Mm-hmm.
That was 1984. That was quite a while ago.
Yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah,
40 years ago.
yeah,
41.
yeah. And so you graduated from high school, and then you went to what happened next
And then I did
after high
my
school?
Bachelor of Architecture, and that was I was despite the really slow setback, I managed to get an honors degree and being awarded as the best designer. And then the year after, while I was doing work and doing private work, I did the Master of Construction Management in New South Wales University also. So then I finished that one. They finished my thesis, and I set up my business after that. Now that
So
was
where did you get this passion for architecture? Because that's, coming from a jungle and coming from your dad having a grocery store, that's very, all of those, you don't really think about architecture a whole lot. Or did you think about it? Was there something that inspired you into that area?
no, I not no, but I think during the early year of the high school, I began to develop passion in drawing and
Yeah.
craftsmanship. When I look back, Paul, I think it was just dad was cutting timbers for the roof, the shingle roof for a house. When I
Oh,
grew up in Surabaya, I was entrusted to my grandfather's home. We lived there for about 3 years before Dad moved to Surabaya, and my grandfather was very famous in making the antique Chinese furniture. That was, the pieces
oh,
where the
wow.
pockets are being are slided into pieces. So over there, I grew up with the smell of polyurethane, the smell of
Yeah.
plywood, the smell of the liquor and all this alcohol, and you learn how to cut in precision. And
Wow.
I was getting really good at it. So I'm enjoying that part of craftsmanship, creating something and just really creating this cut. Remember the old day where you cut the plywood and you create the word or like some keyword there, and then you furnish that. It was
Yeah.
that, and I think that was part of it. But I've always loved architecture, Paul, and but I did want to design. I actually, the one that I really was more passionate about was actually aeroplane.
Oh,
I
wow.
know exactly your F-14, F-15, F-22. I draw all of that machine. I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
draw, and I'm quite good at drawing that aeroplane and understand the whole concept. When I said all, I mean to my level there, right? And I wanted to do aeronautical engineer, but then I thought, gee, what am I going to do after that? Really, I mean, I'm going to go to school, and I think that was limited vision that I have.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could have done it. I probably would be setting up jet fighter and the like. But so I decided to just do architecture because I thought I want to run my own business one day,
Yeah.
and I did.
Yeah.
I did my architecture.
Yeah. And so when you graduated from sorry, what was that?
I'm still passionate about aeroplane, and I'm hoping
Oh,
one day I could fly into the F-22 and pay
oh,
for it.
wow. It'll happen, man. It'll happen. And so, after you graduated from your studies, did you go straight into entrepreneurship? Did you get a job? Like, what was that like when you graduated?
I actually starting to do a lot of work for my auntie, my uncle to do their fences, garages, houses, and my own bathroom. And so I'm already starting the entrepreneurship right from year three. When I did that, and so I was already on the path of creating that work and that business. Yeah. So after my master degree, I kind of landed my first big house in Rose Bay, more of the upmarket area. That was also my auntie, who just moved from Hong Kong, and I did their house. And then later, and about 2 or 3 years later, I built up my own construction company. And then about at the same time, I was also building my property development company. But I've always wanted to become a property developer. I was inspired by your American guy by the name of John Podman. He's a
Hmm.
designer,
Yeah.
but he built that hotel. And I said, look, I would love to just design and build it myself rather than designing for somebody else.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
stubbornness and don't really want to be ruled by someone and want to just be creative by myself. But so that's a journey. And then in 1994, I set up my first architecture business by the name of Joshua International Architects. 7 years later, I grew it up to about 15 people, and then I bring the whole division together into one of this Crown Group company. But in 1996, I commenced my first property development, raising up $5 million capital, and from my auntie, my uncle that I did the work for, and it's kind
Yeah.
of lesson in life. Big trust come from small trust. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that I did that house and garages and fences and bathroom where I forget to put waterproofing for. And you learn that big and start small. Like you will never become an expert overnight. You're just gonna have to prototype a lot of things. And I'm glad that I didn't do it for 2,000 units, because otherwise it
Right. Right.
mistakes, right? Um,
Right.
20,000 units, making a mistake of 1,000 is $20 million mistakes, right? But 20
Right.
bathroom mistakes is $4,000-5,000 that you can redo. So that was a bit of the journey. But 1996, I set up this call it the startup called Crown Group, and I raised the $5 million, and I was one of the three directors. And we grew that business for about the next 8 years, from the first $28 million job to then in 8 years we have about $1 billion in the pipeline. And then the recession hits New South Wales in 2004, and the job didn't grow. The business didn't grow for the next 3 or 4 years, which is actually a blessing in disguise, because in 2007, 2008, the whole economy, like the whole global financial crisis.
Right. Right. Right.
So I think there was that period of time that I think I'd like to call it a divine deceleration. It was actually being slowed down for a purpose. In
Yeah. Yeah.
2007, 2008, we were quite cast up, and we bought massive number of development, almost about $1 billion of cross realization value within a year. And from there on, it's the businesses grew as if there is no border to the business.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but
Wow.
there was a period of moment in 2004 during the recession of New South Wales. That's where I kind of learned to create my own identity. Like I set up this pathway to create an urban resort development. So it's
Mhm.
almost a 5-star hotel concept in residential development. It's your oasis, your home. And I remember during that 2004 crisis, we grew, like, because we just couldn't build enough building to contain the demand, and
Wow.
we sandwich everybody in the office in that 350 square meter office. And
Yeah.
then after two years later, we moved to the city. We took 1,000 square meter floor plate, and then 2008 happened, the global
Right. Right.
crisis. But we have established our brand, our identity in 2008, moving from 100 $200 million building. We're starting to move into a $500 million development side as a gross realization value, and we made a fortune since 2004 all the way until until the COVID-19 2009.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we were stable. We have stabilized the business, and we were very low leverage as a business, so we were able to weather that COVID-19, and not even losing any of our staff during that time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, one of the things that I remember when we had dinner in Melbourne is you pulled out your iPad and you showed me some new stuff that was happening, and of course now that stuff has been built. And one of the things that I've admired about you for a long time is your design aesthetic, your love for great design, and the buildings that you've built in Sydney, like I had mentioned in the opening, are extremely iconic. They've changed the cityscape. They are pieces of artwork. Where did that come all the way back from you being that little doodler, that little sketcher from as a young guy, that you love design as much as practicality?
Um, I, there was a journey, like it didn't begin in the first year because you didn't have the brand and you were not being able to sell the product as fast as you want it to be. Well, and I think you got to be realistic. Like when you start, you're going to have to be Hyundai as a car. Like slowly, hopefully, you become Honda, and then one day you become Tesla, or
Right,
sorry, Toyota, or Lexus, right, and Mercedes. So, but it was a journey of really building economical but beautiful building, but nothing iconic, nothing timeless. in the first 8 years, and then as you gain the confidence, the practicality of development, and the brand recognition over
Right, right.
time, and then I'm starting to push that in about 10 years into the business, where I thought, how do we create timeless architecture?
Yeah,
I thought about that buildings that were designed. Often we design it for 50 years because we think that after 50 years it actually has a value, less value. But then I thought, hang on, timeless architecture in the world becomes precious with age.
right, right,
So
right.
was it really the construction technology? Was it really to do with the color and the fabric? I guess from there, being an architect, I kind of realized that it was not so much. I mean, it's nice to be the first leading building in technology things because people remember that, right? But it was really more about the experience of space. That how do
Right.
you engage the space that hits the head, the heart, and the spirit of a human being, and that sort of
Yeah.
dimension of a human being. So I'm beginning to look at ways to create an experience into my building. Like, so my building is something that to be like there's a lot of wow. It's not just
Yeah. Yeah.
wow, right? It's
Right. Right.
wow, wow, and then you go, wow. So
Yeah. And I'm
you
going to
know
try and
what?
add some of those photographs of some of those buildings to the YouTube video. This is both an audio and a video podcast, so I will add some of those photographs that will truly wow those who watch the video.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, so that was like we've had a statement in our company: "Do not stop till it's wow."
Yeah, I love that.
It's not
Yeah.
about good to great. We say, but if it's just wow, no, 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 don't stop until it's wow. And then,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. I
so
love that.
really, that when you look at that, Paul, that it was to do with that how we experience space, the height, the compression, the depression of space, small space, big space, small space, because it was almost how do you engage the sensory of a human being. So great
Right.
architecture of the world. I mean, if you look at the Japanese architecture, for instance, you go into a room by bowing down into the veil, right? But bowing down, and it goes into a like you go into a smaller section, then it explodes into a big space, and then it goes smaller again. Some of the great architects in the world, like Kerry Hill, the late legendary Australian architect who built his business in Singapore, who designed most of the Aman Hotel in the world, were a great creator of that space. So I learn and
Yeah.
travel around the world and see amazing architecture and see that. And but there's also about design that hits the head, that is the intellectual level. That's wow, that was clever. Like there's something
Right.
wow,
Right.
that's clever. But it also engages the heart of human being, because this is what some building makes you happy, some building makes you depressed, right? Some building just makes you I hate it. And when I have people walking through like Arc by Crown in Sydney, where they said, I don't know why I like this building, but this building
Yeah.
makes me happy. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the emotion of human being. And then, but there's also about the inspiration of the spirit, the can-do spirit, that when people said, this is just almost the highest experience of all, because not every building gets you that goosebump, right? Some buildings,
Right. Right.
yeah, it's clever, good technology, good construction,
Right.
nice space, but it didn't get you a goosebump where you said, "Oh my God, that was amazing," And
Yeah. Yeah.
that is to do with architecture, but also to do with height. So I bring all my residents, all my the people that live in our building, to a common area on the highest floor, because there's something about height that people don't realize. It's quite spiritual,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
this is probably why people talk about going to the mountain to pray, right? We do
Right.
not go
Right.
to the valley to pray, but we go up to the mountain to pray, because there's something about height that somehow
Yeah.
fits the spirit of a human being. So my architecture is very egalitarian, in other words, accessible to everybody. The most amazing space of all does not belong to the privilege of the last penthouse. It belongs
Yeah.
to everybody in my building, because I designed building to be quite egalitarian. That my customers are very wealthy people that do not want to be feeling, well, they don't feel they're privileged. They feel they're blessed, and they don't want to be
Yeah.
showing themselves that they are richer than somebody else. But they know they have the wealth. But it was more of those architecture, accessibility, but also a sense of ownership. So that's
Right.
what I think. That's what probably what people like about our building, Paul. Like, because I said to them, if all they say that's Iwan's building, that's One Global Capital building, I have failed. my
Right,
task.
right.
But if they said, that's my building, that's our building, that's powerful, like, because then they're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just saying my architecture is part of or it's just, well, it's another building that was designed and built by one global capital, but they say, hey, let's go to that place here because that's really an amazing city building that we can get together. So a sense of belonging is powerful, and not
Right.
inclusiveness, because inclusiveness often is more about people feeling superior. Let me include you.
Yeah, yeah.
Who are you? Who are you to say that? Let me include you. But when people said, look, you know what? This is our building, they feel like, wow. Then I think I've done my part. So you start seeing my architecture brings the public, the private space together. Like Green Square is a place where people come through our building.
Yeah,
They're no
yeah.
longer a gated community where you see it. I think if you look at the example, some of the great architecture in the world, like Sydney Opera House, I mean, some of the architecture in the world, like in Northern Europe, where you experience the building. You're no longer seeing it,
Right,
but you
right.
journey and you walk into the building and you're part of that that building. And that's really when people say, that's when I feel like I think we are successful as a property developer or architect or building industry.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I've said often is excellence ignites enthusiasm, ignites evangelism. And,
Ah,
and that's what I believe you're doing. And when what you just shared is when you do things with excellence, it ignites enthusiasm. You can't avoid it. You have an excellent experience. You get enthusiastic about it, whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's in, a building, whether it's with some sort of a brand. When you encounter excellence, you get enthusiastic. And when you're enthusiastic about something, you evangelize about it. And so, it's not something that you have to force people to do. They each ignite the other. And that's what it sounds like is happening to your buildings is because of the excellence, people get enthusiastic about it. And because they're enthusiastic about it, they evangelize or tell others about it and say, come see this building that is built with excellence. And I love that about what you're doing.
I like that one, Paul, because um, yeah, because it comes natural, isn't it? When you're inspired and you tell the whole world. I mean, I met in one of my top rat developments, 650 units over a 60,000 square meter shopping center. I bump into these doctors, families, doctors, and the lady, the wife, the mother was kind of. I said, "Hey, by the way, I'm Iwan Sunito," and I shake her hand, and she shake my hand. She said, "I know you." I said, "Thank you." I said, "Do you mind telling the whole world about my building?" He said, "Iwan, don't worry about it. We are bringing everybody to our building. Oh my God, your building is better than the perspective in your brochure." And that
Wow.
was really, it was almost inspiring. And of course, sets me alive too. Like it's such on
Right,
fire.
right,
Like,
right.
wow. I mean, and the funny thing about that building, there's nothing iconic about that building. It was more about plenty of trees, garden and trees, mature trees, that instant jungle. Because nobody can say that they don't like trees, right? So
Right, right.
it was the way that the space is coordinated. You journey the whole space and you meander the whole space, the pocket of spaces within that, and they become my greatest ambassador, Bob. And then one of the influencer, like very famous television presenters, said, like, "When I could be your brand ambassador," and I thought to myself, "No, my building is my brand ambassador. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
the world." So that's
yeah.
probably why we had movies like Married at First Sight being filmed in our building for the last 2 seasons. Now they're going for next year. And we now have Disney World directors staying in our building because they hated to stay somewhere else because they come. They brought in all the superstar in our building. And of course, we pretend that we do not know them. Of course, we know them. I just pretend when I go there. "Sorry, sir, what's your name?" "I know you're part of that Bumblebee studio guy. You're the Crazy Rich Asian movie guy." And we just pretend that we don't know. It's like the Solid Crew. And well, of course, I've watched you guys there, but we had a policy that I think, like it's almost like Jensen Franklin, Pastor Jensen Franklin, that he makes sure that any of his guests do not feel they're being different. They're just being one
Right,
of many.
right,
And
right.
then I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah.
You appreciated everybody. That's because they're super famous or anything. You appreciated the fact that anyone that stay with us is special for us.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love about your buildings, it's almost like you've gone past where buildings kind of went for a while, is where they became basically gray boxes, and you've kind of gone back to a previous era where buildings were these things of grandeur and majesty and beauty, and it's almost it's kind of similar to what even Steve Jobs did with computers. They were all beige boxes for the longest time. It was beige box after beige box after beige box, and then he came and said, you know what? It doesn't need to be a beige box. It doesn't have to be. You're using metal, you're using wires, you're using circuits. Why are we using the exact same materials all the time in the same way? Why not do something different aesthetically? And it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing with your buildings, is you're going back to a time when buildings were these things of beauty, these things of grandeur, these things of elegance, these things that were worthy of paintings.
That's actually fascinating, isn't it? I've been blessed working with the Japanese architects like Kengo Kuma and Koichi Takada, and they kind of help me. I build them, but they also build me to some extent. And
Yeah.
there's something about the Japanese approach to artwork that they in their thinking that the absence of everything is perfection. In other words, that if you can remove all the pieces and there's nothing else to remove to be able to be removed, then that's a perfect thing. And
Wow.
I think that was something about that's powerful, Paul, because most of us is trying to do things that are complex, right? We try to come out with a building that are different, like where
Right.
we are approaching things differently. Because I love this statement from a friend of mine. I mean, and he said that you don't have to be different to be good, because when you're good, you are different. So in other
I
words,
like
just
that. Yeah.
focus on being good, really good. And when you look at our architecture, they're simple, like a brush strokes of one stroke.
Yeah.
Sydney Opera House is a sail form.
As a
If you look at
silhouette. Yeah.
silhouette building now, if you look at the most wonderful building in the world, like Eiffel Tower or whatever that may be, they're simple, they're very iconic, because our brain really can't think beyond three. Like the moment that we go beyond three, we really just don't remember it anymore. But one is powerful. One with the three supporting to one is always powerful. And it's how our brain function. Like Huey, Louis, Dewey. I mean, that was the three musketeers, the
Yeah.
spirit, the
Yeah.
the mind, and the body. That anything beyond three becomes complicated. So when you look at architecture, it's one thing with three elements that's supporting that one thing. It could be the base, the architecture, and the experience, and that's it really. So if you look at Infinity, we're a One Global Resort hotel that's doing 99.9% occupancy right now. It was like, I
Yeah.
mean, you never have a hotel at 99.9% occupancy. I mean, you'd be lucky to do 75 to 85%, right? But it was
Wow.
just to do with that master stroke of of genius of wrapping the whole building with a ribbon. When you think about
Yeah.
Infinity, it was actually three or four buildings together. Now, all the architects that have come forward with us is putting the three, four buildings together, but this building is wrapped with a ribbon. Some people think it's like a ski slope, and some people think it's like the
Yeah.
Arms King's chair,
Oh,
whichever
wow.
way
Yeah.
it is. But it was the stroke of genius of tying everything to become one. Now, the Japanese architecture approach is very different to our modern Western philosophy of architecture, because we try to create buildings that are so different. Where the Japanese architecture try to create building that blended with nature. So to
Oh, wow. Yeah.
them, architecture is not the focus. Nature is the focus, and the architecture is more their background. And I
Right.
think
Right.
there's power in that one, there, Paul, when the building just blended with everything else, and
Yeah.
the city become beautiful because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and I'll post some of those photos as well, because yeah, there's beautiful uh, buildings that you've incorporated that greenery with it, and it's just majestic and just beautiful. Now, you mentioned that one of the places that you had pretty good occupancy. Wasn't there one that you did, or maybe it's this one that I remember that it sold pretty quickly, like it sold out? Is this the one, or was that
This
another
is the one.
building?
This is the one. This
Yeah.
is the one. The Infinity, or the One Global Resorts Green Square now, it's kind of that unique uh, location, because it's the only building in Sydney, the only hotel in Sydney where you have the transport train station directly connected to your building.
Oh,
So
wow.
and it has this open piazza. It has all the space, the amenities around it. It has one of the largest swimming pool built after Sydney Olympic 2000. It has the convenience of 2 stops from the Sydney airport and 1 stop to Central, and three
Wow.
more stops to the branded stores in Sydney. So it has everything that makes that unique. In fact, that I'm still trying to analyze as we're trying to roll out this 10,000 rooms hotel in the whole world. What makes it perfect? I'm pretty sure it's everything that makes it amazing. I mean, of course, we had
Right.
the kids think that because we had McDonald's, KFC, Taco Bell in one building, and, and the grown-ups say, "Oh my God, that's junk food," but the kids say, "Oh my God, that was amazing. That was a great
Yeah.
building." So it's everything to the everything that makes it amazing. I mean, of course, our smallest size is about 55 square meter. Sorry, 45 square meter for a studio. The biggest size is like 100 square meter. So it's a place where you can actually live and stay longer than just a few
Right.
days. And that's probably why, like, we almost underwrite the base of our occupancy by 50% by long-term stay. People who say they more than a few months.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is the one that I sell the concept with. I mean, with just one sketch of paper. Now, be mindful that it took about 2 or 3 stops before we launch it. We almost launched it, we stop it. We almost launch it, we stop it,
Yeah.
and then we launch it. And that was the aha moment. And then I had that opening day and the launch day, and I had like 1,000 deposits with $10,000 each. So we actually was sitting on a
Wow.
$10 million deposit in a bank account. But at the end of 385 units or 323 units with $385 million sales, I have to turn off the other 700 people to say, "I'm sorry, sir. We have
Wow.
no more units left." That was like
Wow.
$100 million in 1 hour. 5 hours, we wiped out the whole thing. Bang, it's gone.
Wow. Yeah, it made the news. I mean,
Yeah,
that's, making $100 million in a couple of hours, and that kind of
well,
occupancy
an
is
hour,
just
by the way,
amazing.
Paul.
In an
100
in an
in an hour.
That's fantastic. So I do want to hear about what you're doing now. You've got incredible vision, and I've always seen you as a visionary, as always as a creative, and as a creative, you're always pushing boundaries, and you're always trying to think different and get inspired from different places. So now you're doing something that's very inspiring. With it's almost like Lego blocks, it's containers. Like tell me a little bit about your vision there. What's next for you?
Well, the vision for us is more now. It's taking the business to the next level. I mean, I have an aspiration to go public, but as of last year, I was looking at one building of ours that has a bit of difficulty in terms of access and problem of like delivery. How do you build a building on a small footprint when there is a major road? So this is a great lesson in life that opposition is always your opportunity to rise.
Yeah.
And my staff says, "Oh, come on, Iwan, well, why don't we just abandon the job?" I said, "No, I do not start something that I stop. I start and grow. And even if we do not make money out of the job, the lesson that we learn from that job will be worth it for us." And I also know that hard problem is good, like it.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
Well, I always say limitations breed innovation, and so
oh.
that's what you're doing, right?
So I said to them, "Look, well, somebody else can build it that cheap. Why can't we do it? And to make it work." And so one of the guy comes and said, "Well, have you thought about module construction?" I said, "No, I haven't thought about it, but then I've seen some publication in Europe and the like, and to see how a container system can actually be assembled and also disassembled, and it has a lot of the benefit of being environmentally conscious because you reduce the cut, like the waste, because you're basically making the same thing, so there's no more wastage. You
Right.
design it perfectly, and it's also
Right,
safer."
and you'd probably create the tools to create the exact size things as opposed to
Yeah,
creating generic shapes and things and then having to cut it off,
yeah,
right?
and it's also safe because you're working undercover and you're working in a safe environment, and it's also safe for environmentally in the long term because you're no longer. I mean, you look at building, 40% have to be disposed somewhere, and the knocking down of the building. But this one is you could actually just move it somewhere else. I mean, it
Wow.
dawned on me, hang on, isn't this like a car ride? And we always thought about, well, it has to be big size. Look, some of my most wonderful architecture is actually not massive, big. It was more to do with the iconic experience. And I thought about flying into business class or first class. I mean, it's a tiny space that you have, but the gadget, the movie, the ability to use a multi-purpose seats, making use of the same space where you sit and you sleep there and you work. was really what you're looking for there. So we went to, and then I said, who are the builders of this container system? Now I was
Yeah.
aware, and I start contacting a couple of my friends who do this prefab structure, because we've already done it for a bathroom. Like our bathroom is actually a pot bathroom, so it's being assembled in a factory in Melbourne, and it's shipped to Sydney, and then just basically you put a box there, and it saves you from, like, waterproofing is always the biggest issue in building. So if you
Yeah.
can do it in a safe area with free of dust, you win a long way, right? I mean, it's more
Wow.
costly, slightly more costly, but it's safer, it's clean. Like, there's no more wet straight in your apartment there, because otherwise you got to put cement, you got to put grouting, you got to come back here,
Right.
and then people forget to put the waterproofing properly, and you don't test it properly. Like anything, people are tired, climbing up 30, 40-story building.
Yeah.
So we did that, and I realized that like hotel like Marriott and M Hotel have been using this modular system, and I know that there was company in China, also in Poland and some part of Europe, Northern Europe, that builds it, including USA, but many of them have actually failed. Paul, because
Wow.
then because there's a bit more complication to just ship a building from somewhere around the world to Australia, because we got probably one of the strictest compliance rule in the world, like waterproofing, toilet, hydraulic safety of fire. All of that is important. And how do you deliver it to Australia, and how do you get it certificate? How do you get it funded? And
Yeah.
but out of all of that modulation system that I see in the world, because they were designing it for different building all the time, I realized that all you save is probably about 10% of your real cost and time. But then the problem is that you're going to have to buy the whole building up front. You thinking about container system, you're not just shipping it like building, you pay along the way and the banks funded you. This one is you
Yeah.
almost have to buy the entire building, get it assembled, ship it to Sydney, right? Yes, it
Yeah.
costs
Yeah.
you cheap, but by the time you add the modulation, the module system, plus the lift core, the fire stair, and all of these things, you're actually doubling up that cost, plus the risk of having a building being built somewhere else, right?
Wow.
Then I thought, well, but if you can somehow create that like a car, where where you can just design the most amazing building and you just duplicate it across the world and robotize the whole thing, because after all, a hotel room, it's a room for bed, a space for your dining space, and a space for your bathroom. These are so
Right.
simple. I mean, it's the car manufacturer has done it. I mean, it's there's no. Then I'm starting to do a bit more research, and we traveled to China to look at one of the biggest container manufacturer in the world, who has done 8,000 of these modular homes across the whole world, in terms of student accommodation, hotel in the world. And I said, guys, do you want to work together with me to produce just for me 3 types of room? It will be deployed across the whole world. But the idea that this is so timeless that by the time we're not using it anymore in that city, because it's no longer fashionable. It's cheaper for you to just ship it somewhere else. It's almost like an iPhone. It's cheaper for you to buy brand new rather than fixing it, right? Um,
Yeah. Right.
Imagine that, Paul. And that's the exploration. And I'm starting to look at the car industry and what sort of robot system that they're actually using. And then you look at then you realize that the technology, the AI industry and the technologies does not belong to the privilege. Like it used to be the thought of the Western Europe or the European country that produced the BMW, the Mercedes Benz, everything starts with B, right? That would manufacture with all the robot. But now you realize BYD, Xiaomi produce a car every 68 seconds. And the reason is because they're using the same robotic system. Like this time is I kind of know that there's only a few brands that are there. So, hey, even the startup in China is now doing 68 seconds a car,
Wow.
producing the most amazing design. And they were not as amazing before, but then they're now starting to engage a lot of the Germans come and a designer, and the car looks better and better.
Right.
So then I thought, well, it would be too costly if I said I just want a car, like designed for me. It'd be costing us $5-10 million a car, right? But
Right. Right.
would I complain if somebody produced a car that said, look, you can have it for 50 grand, but you're going to be the same as everybody else? Yeah, I'll take the $50,000 any day. So then I thought, if I could do this, we can address a lot of the issue social housing crisis that we have across the whole world, Paul. I mean, at the end
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
world, like affordability is always the issue for most people, and the issue is this: that when we talk about affordable housing, we associate that with being ugly. It's ugly. Well, it's basic building, the cheapest
right,
appliances you can put in, the cheapest timber that you can ever afford to, and cut this, cut that, and let's go for the cheapest architect, cheapest engineer. But therefore, great architecture is always not accessible to the people. But I
right,
thought,
right,
well, why can't we create something that makes it accessible for everybody, but make it amazing, just like car industry? Like we
right.
do not. It was almost like the Ford T model, right? You can choose
Yeah,
anything, but there's
as
only
long as
one
it's black.
black. There's no, you can choose anything you want, but it's black.
Right,
So,
right.
and what that I thought, well, and I kind of that was so simple, and I thought I look at the whole investment up front. This is no brainer because you gotta. I mean, how much is going to cost to invest on this robotic machine? It's not that expensive, right? The beauty of
Yeah.
that is you can almost manufacture this without any lights because the robot doesn't need any light. It doesn't need any person there, and it actually creates consistency, and you get better. And in Hong Kong, apparently, well, not apparently, because as I visited Chiang near Guangzhou there, and I went to Hong Kong to see the prototype and basically the display unit of the modular construction. The Hong Kong government is pushing for this idea because they believe that this is not just this is addressing housing crisis, but it's safety, it's environmentally better. Third thing is you can actually reuse it instead of knocking down the whole completely the gigantic building. They just
Right,
completely build a building for student housing and move that entire building 2 years later into somewhere else, but they just have to bring that container to
yeah,
a section where they check the safety, the structural integrity, and then just ship it to someone else. Now, in Hong Kong, of course, they do not like it to be out of container, metal container. They want it to be concrete because it's how the Chinese like to knock on the door, right? I'm sure they do that in the US too. But so they now produce that out of a concrete shell and basically designed to be a size where you can ship it through a truck. So, I mean, in a simple way, that a container modular system is actually a room that you containerize to enable you to ship it weatherproof, moisture-proof, and for safety and structure integrity. That's
wow.
really in a simple way. Now, so I've come up with a concept where the foyer is going to be a certain way. The foyer could change all the time,
Yeah,
but the room could just be three type because really, Paul, I've traveled around the world. I've stayed in so many hotels. I would prefer to have the same perfect hotel room that I love and being able
yeah,
to travel. But oftentimes you go into different places and you thought, well, the brand is going to guarantee great success, but you go into that place and say, oh my God, the room is wrongly designed and
yeah,
the niche is wrong, the door is wrong. Hey, I'm paying a lot of money for this, but they're not getting it right, and because we're just repeating the same mistakes again and again. So I'm
yeah,
excited
yeah.
about that deployment for the business scale, and I'm excited about being able to address the social housing crisis that we have across the whole world. But I'm also excited about the challenge of going to New York with that because I think the American understand on how, and really like I think American embraces people who have the ability, who has the scale, but also has the business that can be scale up. But they also understand
Right,
there is risk to everything. But I do not do projects that are risky. I'm a very logical person. I do not invest on something that can be scaled up and somebody that has not had a track record. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think we're going to be we're going to be I think having fun for the next few years.
Oh
That's
man,
really an
that
exciting thing.
yeah, that sounds amazing and exciting. And I love that like you said, you're a very logical person, but you're also a very creative person. I know you're also messing with photography and stuff like that as well. But I love the idea that you're bringing that design sensibility to architecture, even with this new project that you're working on, because it does come down to what I shared about Steve Jobs. Like if this computer has wires, plastic, chips, and all of these things. But so does this beautiful computer. Why not make it beautiful if I'm using
Mm.
the exact same ingredients? And so it sounds like you're doing that with all your buildings, but also now you're taking it into something even different, more different, where you're saying, if we're using the same elements, why do we have to make it boring? Why do we have to make it something that is not aesthetically pleasing? And I love that motivation in what you're doing with that. And I hope you the best of luck with it. That's just amazing.
And thank you, Bill. I think, I love the ability to challenge that thinking, and because I think it's not just gut feel; it's got to make sense, really, in business.
Right.
As much as I love to design the most amazing building in the world, you got to be realistic. That do we have the brand for it? Do they have the ability to sell the product? Because you can only do business well if you if you buy well, you add value, and you sell well.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been amazing. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your vision and sharing your story. Truly amazing. And it's great seeing you again. And maybe when you come to the US, we can have dinner again.
Let's do that, really, Paul. I'm looking forward for that. Thank you so much for having me. We'll catch up again in the future.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.